My name is Alex Johnson, 35 years old. If I hadn't had that encounter, I might still be a timid and unremarkable guy. Good job today. Thanks, you too. I respond briefly with a smile to my co-worker's greeting. Though it's been a while since I was last at the headquarters, the renovated interior makes it feel like a completely different company, leaving me feeling a bit uneasy. I'm an ordinary-looking office worker, but perhaps because I grew up in a rural area, I'm a bit excited about living in the city for the first time in years. As I walk through the floor, I suddenly notice a painting hanging in the hallway. It's a picture of a lush, green countryside. The simple painting brings back memories of my bittersweet teenage years. Yes, I think it's no exaggeration to say that back then, I experienced the love of a lifetime. It was 18 years ago, a day I will never forget. In my junior year of high school, I was seated next to a beautiful girl with striking bobbed hair and almond-shaped eyes. Her intelligent profile, long slender limbs, and flawlessly smooth white skin. Her name was Olivia. She was somewhat of a celebrity at our school. She transferred in during the winter of our sophomore year and topped the class in the very next finals. Transferring in during such a time was rare enough, but her immediate academic success at our competitive high school caused quite a stir. And with her refined beauty, even senior students would come to our classroom just to see her. Not only did our classmates try to make their moves on her, there were also rumors that even popular upperclassmen confessed. The captain of the soccer team, the ace of the judo team, the vice captain of the tennis team, the prince of the basketball team, the top scorer of the volleyball team, the list of those who confessed to her and were turned down was endless. There were so many who got rejected that new rumors started circulating. People said she was engaged to a wealthy heir or dating a handsome college student from a prestigious university or involved with an elite from a certain medical school. Even upperclassmen were gossiping about her. But Olivia didn't seem to care about any of it. She didn't engage with the students watching her from afar and, more obviously, she didn't make friends. Always engrossed in a paperback book with a cover. She would stare intently at her book and turn the pages with her delicate fingers. She was seen as an unapproachable type. Needless to say, even though we were sitting next to each other, we had never had a single conversation. So I never imagined that we would grow closer in such a way. It was a sweltering afternoon just before the summer vacation, with the sun blazing down. Most of the students had already gone home after the closing ceremony. In the early afternoon, I was running down the hallway, out of breath. I had left all the handouts for summer assignments in the classroom. Forgetting to wipe the sweat running down my face, I yanked the classroom door open, and what I saw made me stop in my tracks. There was Olivia, slumped over her desk, asleep. Next to her was a paperback book. She must have fallen asleep while reading. As I got closer, I could see a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. It was a scorching afternoon. If she got heatstroke, it would be terrible. I was honestly hesitant to speak to her, as we had hardly ever talked. That adolescent sense of embarrassment. But this wasn't the time for that. Determined, I was about to wake her up when my eyes fell on the paperback book next to her. Unlike usual, its cover was removed. At that moment, Olivia stirred. She stretched and slowly got up. When she looked up at me, her eyes remained unfocused for a while. I wonder how much time had passed. Unable to bear the silence, I spoke up, and Olivia suddenly widened her eyes and glanced at the paperback book. She immediately yelled and hid the book. I was the one who was taken aback by the volume of her voice, which was so unlike her usual self. I also let out a shout and involuntarily recoiled. "Did you see?" Her expression, looking at me awkwardly, appeared to be a bit childish than usual. The paperback book, usually covered, now revealed. What was she reading? She was always described as mysterious. Through the gap in her arms hiding the book, I saw it wasn't a paperback but a somewhat obscure boys' comics. The kind of mischievous comics elementary school boys read. We stared at each other in silence. It didn't take long for the distance between Olivia and me to shrink after that. It turned out I was also a fan of the comics she was reading. Once we started talking. She was far from the mysterious image she appeared to be. She was as chatty and straightforward as any of our female classmates. Well, I can't help it. I've got this stiff appearance, and I can't just say, I actually love comics, out of nowhere, can I? She spoke frankly, munching on a sandwich behind the gym. Since then, we started hanging out at that same spot after school, talking about anything while holding our study guides. Sometimes, we'd teach each other and talk about our favorite comics. Before Olivia took the top spot, I was actually the number one in our grade. While she had taken my place at the top, I didn't feel any bitterness. More than that, I felt incredibly happy, elated, and a bit giddy to have a friend with whom I could share and get excited about our studies. Olivia gradually started talking to other classmates after the summer vacation. But it still seemed like she wasn't fully opening up to them. Her tone of voice was different. When I pointed this out once, she brushed it off lightly, saying, "Really? But I talk normally with you, so it's no big deal." It didn't seem to bother her much. We had a mutual understanding to keep it a secret from everyone else. With her long eyelashes and those lips that spun humorous words, who wouldn't fall in love with her? My Adam's apple bobbed. Her profile was truly as beautiful as a sculpture. One day, when I showed a bit of insecurity, "You're at it again," Olivia said with exasperation, slapping me on the back. "You're very talented, Alex. You should have more confidence." Olivia was always there to give me a push when I needed it. At some point, I truly fell for the girl who was always encouraging me. However, our relationship came to an end in the fall of our senior year. "What's that?" Olivia muttered in a low tone. I kept my gaze down, wandering around silently. "You promised, didn't you? We'd aim for K University together." I couldn't bring myself to look directly at her as she whispered in a fading voice. It was a time when we were deep into our college entrance exams. As the wind started to feel chilly, I had been accepted to T University on a recommendation. I hadn't told Olivia that I was aiming for a recommendation. We had promised each other about half a year ago to aim for K University together. T University is a great school, but... Olivia paused. When I cautiously glanced up, our eyes met as she was staring at me intently. "With your ability, you could have definitely aimed for K University, right?" Her gaze was unwavering. Unable to withstand it, I looked down again. "I'm sorry." Yes, I had run away from the college entrance exam competition. We both aimed for the business school at K University. Among the private universities known for their difficulty, K University's business school was particularly popular, with intense competition. Our mock exam scores both placed us at C rank. It was hard to say we would get in easily. Still, Olivia would undoubtedly continue to aim for K University. With her relentless drive and strong will, she would surely succeed in the exams. But I was scared. I kept imagining a scenario where only Olivia got in. I couldn't picture myself passing the exam for K University, and I started losing focus while studying. I started to fear I wouldn't get accepted anywhere. That's when I grabbed the chance for a recommendation from T University. If I got greedy, I might end up not getting accepted anywhere. Failing K University, and then regret not choosing the recommendation from T University would have been too late. Not getting accepted anywhere would be hell. So, when I was accepted, I felt an immense sense of relief. "Are you really okay with that?" Olivia muttered quietly. I remained silent for a while, then slowly nodded. "I see. The reason I chose T University was because I wasn't confident about getting into K University. That was a big factor, but even if I did get in, with my current academic level, I would barely keep up with the classes. I could only envision myself getting exhausted from the relentless studying every day. I couldn't see my future at K University. I deeply regretted making an easy promise to aim for K University with Olivia. But I couldn't bring myself to say it to Olivia, who was steadily moving toward her goal. After silently looking at me for a while, Olivia finally said, "Congratulations, Alex," and smiled. That was her answer. Olivia quietly walked past me as I stood there in shock. Left alone, I felt crushed by the sense of defeat that had surfaced alongside my relief when I got the recommendation. Since that day, I never went back to our spot behind the gym. As expected, Olivia got into K University, and I went to T University. We both secured admission to prestigious universities and were congratulated by those around us, but we never exchanged smiles. We didn't keep in touch after that, and neither of us attended reunions, so I had no idea what Olivia was doing. 5 years after that farewell. At 23, I ran into Olivia by chance in the city. I was working for a company, and Olivia was working for another. We started meeting again, drawn to each other. We were probably just young back then. Now, I think I can understand your feelings and choices a little better, Alex. Olivia, now a bit more mature, said this with a smile. I didn't know what had happened. Olivia didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't push her. But Olivia often had a weary expression. Something must have changed her perspective. But Olivia never talked about it. Naturally, I didn't share anything about the 5 years after we parted ways. Not long after, we got married. However, less than a year later, I was assigned a new post overseas. Olivia didn't want to quit her job at the time, so she couldn't move with me, but she also didn't want to be in a long-distance relationship. So, within just a year of marriage, we faced our separation for the second time. I don't know where Olivia is or what she's doing now. But knowing Olivia, I'm sure she's still pushing forward and doing her best. Drawn in by a painting, I found myself uncharacteristically sentimental. My thoughts were brought back to reality by cheerful laughter coming from ahead. Shaking my head lightly, I looked up to see a man walking with exaggerated gestures, followed by a woman smiling slightly. As they passed by, the man's arm, gesturing grandly, bumped into my shoulder. Watch where you're going. It wasn't me who said that, it was him. Even though he was the one who bumped into me. Oh, sorry. I apologized reflexively. The woman behind him looked at me with a tense expression. Olivia. I found myself saying out loud. Alex. Huh? You know each other? The man looked at us, surprised. Why are you here? Ignoring the man, I spoke to Olivia. I got a new job 6 months ago. Olivia squinted nostalgically. Oh, an old classmate, huh? What a coincidence. The man, seemingly displeased with being left out, joined the conversation. Alex, right? Nice to meet you. I'm Joshua, head of the planning department. Joshua emphasized his title as head of the planning department. I remembered hearing about a young guy who had been promoted for his achievements 6 months ago. Our company, being a foreign firm, decided positions entirely based on merit, without regard for seniority. Some people even got promoted to executive positions in their 20s. Nice to meet you. Oh, don't worry about formalities. We're probably close in age, so no need to be overly polite. Joshua interrupted me with a friendly smile. He had a look that seemed to say, see how nice I am? By the way, Olivia is my direct subordinate. At first, I wondered if it was okay to have a newly joined woman suddenly in the planning department. But she's full of ideas and always reliable. My work wife. Joshua looked at Olivia, seeking her agreement with a right. Olivia smiled beautifully. Oh, please don't call me that. I'm the one who's always relying on you, Joshua. Joshua seemed satisfied with her response and nodded with a broad smile. From Olivia's reaction, it seemed my work wife was a term Joshua used to indicate he liked Olivia. Hey, you. Joshua shifted his gaze from Olivia to me, as if he had just remembered something. Newbie, could you go get us some coffee from over there? We just finished an important meeting. And I was thinking of taking a break with my work wife, Olivia. He pointed to a vending machine with a jerk of his chin. So, this is what they call being sent on an errand. Hey, Joshua, could you stop calling me your work wife? Oops, sorry. I just can't help saying it. You are just so adorable. Noticing my dumbfounded expression, Joshua added, don't worry, I'll pay for it. I only have a $100 bill right now. Let me know your department and name later, he said, waving his hand as he headed toward the break room. I sighed and thought, do I have any change? As I started toward the vending machine. Just then, it happened. Mr. Vice President. Everyone stopped in their tracks at the voice coming from behind. Turning around, I saw a tall, slender woman with a slightly stern expression standing there. What are you doing here? She walked briskly toward me and handed me a stack of documents. Chairman Miller has been looking for you. I've prepared the requested materials, so please review them before the meeting starts. Joshua and Olivia were speechless. I awkwardly accepted the documents from the woman. The meeting isn't until this evening. I was trying to avoid being caught. I understand, but it's important to have tea with the executives. I didn't say it out loud, but my thoughts, most of his talk is just complaining, and I hate it, must have shown on my face. The woman sighed and said, I've informed them that you have been summoned by President Davis before the meeting, so it will be brief. Hearing this, I made a small victory gesture, which seemed to confuse Joshua even more. No way, Vice President? Yes, exactly. The woman cut off Joshua. The official announcement was made at noon today, so it's understandable that you weren't aware. Mr. Johnson will be promoted to Vice President starting next month. I am Katie, his secretary. Katie gave a slight bow to Joshua and Olivia. Joshua's face turned pale as he opened and closed his mouth wordlessly. Behind him, Olivia, with wide eyes, stared at me. I shrugged slightly. Sorry, did I surprise you? It's more than just a surprise. Olivia bit into a sandwich at a nearby cafe. Her manner of speaking and the way she ate hadn't changed since those days, and I found myself smiling unconsciously. After that, Joshua apologized profusely to me, almost in tears. Watching him with a cold gaze, I quietly asked Katie before the meeting. Was it really necessary to call me Vice President in front of them when my appointment is next month? She deeply bowed, saying, I'm sorry, I got a little angry. President Davis, who had been watching this exchange, just laughed. Vice President, really? You've worked so hard. Olivia murmured, placing her sandwich on the table and reaching for her coffee. Back in high school, Olivia loved sweet things. Now she drinks black coffee, I noted to myself. I always felt I needed to properly apologize and thank you, Olivia. Olivia's eyes wavered with confusion. What do you mean? For breaking our promise, and for breaking up when I moved overseas. You were right, Alex. Like I mentioned before, I understand even better now. I started sharing a story with Olivia that I had never told before. When we were 22, because Olivia didn't like talking about the past, I hadn't talked about it either. It was after graduating high school and enrolling at T University. At T University, I threw myself into studying and extracurricular activities with all my might. All to build my self-confidence. I had always hated my own weakness. I could never take decisive action at critical moments. Fearful of failure, I hesitated to take on challenges. I always chose the safe path, afraid of what might happen if I failed. How many times have I been cursed by this personality of mine? I ended up running away from the entrance exams and from the person I loved. That regret had always been with me. So, in college, I decided to change myself. I resolved to do everything I could. I was more active than I could have ever imagined. I seized every opportunity to challenge myself. I boldly took on things I had never done before or thought might be difficult. And once I started something, I gave it my all within my abilities. I valued taking responsibility for my challenges. All of this was driven by Olivia. If we ever met again, I wanted to tell her that I had lived a life without regrets. Living a proactive college life was busy but fulfilling, and I found myself truly enjoying it. I actively attended classes and obtained every qualification I could. I energetically participated in volunteer work and community service activities. Then came the job search. I visited various companies, but I was captivated by Mr. Davis, the then vice president, who is now president. He spoke passionately about the company's merits. There was no seniority system. Everything was merit-based. I wanted to test myself in such an environment, and it's been 13 years since I decided to join the company. I never imagined I'd make vice president. I took a sip of coffee to hide my slight embarrassment. Olivia, who had been staring at me, sighed and looked down. I never talked about it, but back during the college entrance exams, I thought you were a fool for running away from yourself, Alex. No matter how tough it got, if you hadn't run away back then, we could have both gotten into K University and had an exciting college life together. Olivia's words were spot on. Yeah, you're right. I did run away back then. No, you didn't. Olivia lifted her gaze to me. You were right. If you weren't confident, it was okay to run. I realized later that forcing yourself to fight despite the burden on your heart isn't the only correct answer. As she spoke, Olivia looked down again. Her long eyelashes were the same, but she seemed less confident than before, which had always concerned me. Then Olivia began to speak, hesitantly, about her life after graduation, something she had never talked about before. She entered K University, meeting everyone's expectations. She aimed to have the best college life after enrolling. But K University was tough. She found herself surrounded by extremely smart people and felt an insurmountable wall, no matter how hard she studied. Keeping up with the classes was all she could manage. She couldn't understand the material, and assignments took her 10 times longer than others, yielding poor grades. Despite her efforts, her grades didn't improve. Worse yet, she was outperformed by people who treated their studies half-heartedly. Olivia's motivation had always been to work hard and achieve good grades to get results. The harder she worked, the better the results would be. She loved the moments when she could see the results of her efforts and praise herself. She enjoyed feeling that all her hard work had paid off. But gradually, her efforts stopped leading to results. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get good results. She kept getting overtaken by her peers. If it was this hard in the first year, she feared she would fall behind even more in the increasingly specialized second and third years. She was overwhelmed by a vague sense of fear every day. Even if she dedicated all her time to studying, sacrificing socializing, meals with friends, and extracurricular activities, her results barely scraped by. The classes were fast-paced, and she couldn't keep up. Just taking notes from the board took all her effort, and when she reviewed them at home, it took hours to understand what she had written. Olivia, always studying and not socializing, had no one she could call a friend, no one to casually ask for help. Her classmates effortlessly understood the lessons and enjoyed their free time. She couldn't bring herself to ask them for help, fearing they would mock her. She couldn't admit to anyone that despite studying constantly, she could barely keep up with the class. She couldn't ask the teachers directly. She had no friends. She couldn't talk to her parents about it either. Her parents, who had always seen her as an exemplary student, would be saddened to hear she was struggling so much in college. They might be disappointed in her. Olivia, feeling desperate, strained herself until she couldn't attend university anymore. It took me a year to recover, both mentally and physically. Of course, I had to repeat a year, Olivia said with a self-deprecating laugh. Even when she wanted to work hard, her body wouldn't move. She couldn't even think straight. Her mind was in a fog. Even taking a bath or having a meal was a struggle for me back then. When she tried to go to school, she would turn back at the gate, overcome with fear. When she tried to open a textbook, her hands would tremble. She felt an overwhelming urge to escape. Her heart would race, and she couldn't stay still. This state of affairs went on, back and forth, until a year had passed before she realized it. She felt like a failure for making her parents sad. While others were enjoying their classes, why was she unable to do anything? She often blamed herself. However, her parents didn't blame her. You've done nothing wrong. You just overworked yourself and it's like your heart has caught a cold. Rest a bit, and you'll be back to your old self. Don't rush, just focus on resting for now. Those words saved Olivia. She realized it wasn't because she was weak. Being told this allowed her to forgive herself. Returning to university was initially terrifying. She feared facing her own inadequacies and breaking again. But Olivia kept fighting. She managed to overcome her setbacks with sheer determination, gradually attending classes regularly, and eventually graduated. She chose a stable job, but time passed without feeling fulfilled. Around this time, we met again, but Olivia couldn't talk about her college struggles because of what she had said to me in high school. At first, she was nervous that I might ask, but when I didn't, she felt relieved and realized she loved that about me even more. We got married and then separated a year later. After we split, I spent years convincing myself that it was for the best and that I needed to work hard to catch up on what I had missed and get back on the elite track. I worried my parents would be disappointed, thinking I was supposed to be more capable. But then I found you on a job hunting website by chance. I almost spit out my coffee at her words. I remembered doing an interview for job seekers within the company a year ago. I thought it was a mistake at first. Reading about an executive flying around to overseas offices and research facilities while concurrently working as a senior manager. I knew you had gone abroad, but I didn't realize it was such a big deal. When we were married, you never talked much about your work. So I didn't know. The company had changed its name since then, so I didn't even think it was the same place you worked. Olivia smiled wryly as she sipped her coffee. I saw you steadily advancing in your career and wondered what I had been doing. What had I accomplished? I felt restless. I scratched my chin, unable to meet her eyes directly. When I glanced at her, I noticed that the uncertainty in her expression seemed to have softened a bit. I'm really glad I met you again. I wished I could have met you after I'd become more confident, though. Olivia lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked up with a resolute smile. I'm planning to take on a new challenge if I can achieve some success in the planning department. Will you support me then? Her confident tone made me nod without hesitation. Of course. I'll do everything I can to help. I wouldn't be where I am today without you, Olivia. And I wouldn't have recovered without you, Alex. There were so many times I almost gave up, but each time, I thought of you and pushed through. Wanting to be someone you wouldn't be ashamed of became my motivation. Almost instinctively, we both reached out. We shook hands firmly and finally exchanged words of reunion. It's good to see you again after so long. Yes, it's really good to see you too, Alex. After that, we never met alone again. I finally understood Olivia's past. Her troubled face when she was 23 and her refusal to quit her job or accept a long-distance marriage after we got married now made sense. Olivia was desperate. She wasn't just fighting as a wife but as an individual, striving to keep up with me and our peers. She was striving to be someone she could be proud of, someone she could think was doing her best. For her, that measure of effort was her job. Understanding this gave me a sense of clarity. At the same time, it felt like I had finally resolved the bitter separations we had at 18 and 23. 5 years later, Olivia became our company's first female overseas branch manager and went abroad. Despite being busy with business expansion, my days have been fulfilling. 3 years ago, I married Katie, whom I had been secretly dating since joining the company, and we had our first child a year ago. I was a bit late to become a father, but I'm giving my all. I participated in relay races and parent-child competitions at school events. Though nothing reignited between Olivia and me, we now motivate each other as old friends. Having experience in an overseas branch, I have online meetings with Olivia several times a month. Seeing her grow more confident and formidable inspires me and boosts my motivation. My wife supports and watches over this warmly. Running away and facing challenges without fear. Both are important and both are correct. Being honest with your feelings and facing them truthfully. Doing the best you can at that moment. That will surely guide your life in a good direction. If you're too hard on yourself, it's easy to break down. So, value yourself and those around you. I've learned that it's important to continue on your own path. Cherishing your heart and decide how to color your life. Sometimes I will make mistakes. But without fearing them, I will keep looking ahead and moving forward.